I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show with a guest here in New York who's been under an FBI gag order for the past 6 years. In early 2004, an FBI agent visited Nicholas Merrill and handed him a national security letter that ordered him to hand over detailed private records about some of his customers. At the time, Merrill was running an internet service provider in New York called Calyx. Under the USA Patriot Act, the FBI issued more than 192,000 national security letters between 2003 and 2006 in order to obtain sensitive information without a court order. Under the law, recipients of the letters are barred from telling anyone about their encounter with the FBI. While Nicholas Merrill was not the first American to be gagged after receiving a national security letter, an NSL, he was the first to challenge the FBI's secret tactics. After receiving the national security letter, Merrill went to the American Civil Liberties Union, which then filed the first lawsuit challenging the national security letter statute. In the lawsuit, Merrill was simply identified as John Doe. It was only this week, after reaching a settlement with the FBI, that Merrill has been able to come public to reveal his identity. Nick Merrill joins us here in New York. We welcome you to Democracy Now!
Thank you. Good morning.
It's good to have you with us. I bet it's good to be able to speak.
It is kind of a relief, yeah. It's also a bit surreal because I'm not exactly used to it yet, and almost every time I say something about it, I kind of have this knee-jerk reaction, like, I'm not supposed to talk about that, and you know, that got so ingrained into me that it's still a bit strange.
Well, in a moment, we're going to speak to a Connecticut librarian who was joined with your case for Connecticut librarians because they, too, resisted an NSL.
Yes.
But why don't you tell us your story? What day was it? When did it happen, and what happened?
I don't know if I'm allowed to, for some reason, say the exact day. It was in February 2004. An FBI agent visited my office. He brought me a letter. He badged himself. He identified himself as an agent. He gave me this letter. I opened it. I read it in his presence, and a few things kind of leaped out at me upon first reading the letter, one of which was that I was commanded to never tell anyone about the letter. Not that I had received it, not that there had been a request for information. It was a very broad, and there was no exceptions in there. There was no instructions on how to appeal. There was nothing about contacting a lawyer. So I said to the agent at that time, it says here I can't tell anyone about this. Does that include my attorneys? Does that include my business partners? And the man said something to the effect of, I've just been given the job of bringing you this letter. I don't know. I'm not a decision maker. And that was basically the end of our conversation. Then he left. At that point, I was left with this letter, which asked for what I believe to be constitutionally protected information belonging to one of my clients.
You know, in the interests of full disclosure, we were one of your clients, and we worked with Calyx. We worked with you.
Yes.
Did the FBI ask about us?
I'm not allowed to really talk about the target of the investigation. That's, you know, I'm partially released from the gag order in that I can say I was the plaintiff in the case, it was my company, but I'm not allowed to say anything that would give anyone any kind of a hint, basically, as to which of my, 200-some clients it may have been about.
And Democracy Now! Was one of your clients. Who else were among your clients?
A lot of my clients had nothing to do with politics. They were just businesses. Some of them were really boring. They were household names, IKEA, Snapple, Ice-T, Mitsubishi Motors, things like that. But, then I also had a number of not-for-profit organizations, a number of NGOs.
Like?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'd prefer not to mention names if it doesn't matter. But they're really boring, I mean, believe it or not, the New York Civil Liberties Union was one of the clients I was most proud of.
And so what did you do? You did, in fact, contact your lawyer, though you didn't know if that actually was violating the NSL.
According to the, to a strict reading of the letter, it seemed to be a violation of what they were telling me. It said, do not tell anyone. But I basically took a leap of faith, feeling that I I'm an American. I always have the right to talk to a lawyer, and I don't believe there is a such thing as you can't talk to a lawyer. So the first thing I did basically was call my personal attorney, and then he and I ended up going over to the New York Civil Liberties Union at first, and then later we were connected to the American Civil Liberties Union. So yeah, I mean, that was a leap of faith, because, you know, the letter said, do not tell anyone, but basically the first thing I did was tell someone.
Now, how did you decide to sue, to resist the NSL, not to hand over the information?
You know, it was my gut feeling that to do a search, you know, I'm not an attorney, but I know a bit about the Constitution, and my understanding is that the government needs to prove probable cause and go to a judge in order to search. You know, one of the things that leapt out at me about this letter was that it was not signed by a judge. It was signed by someone from the FBI. You know, it seemed to me that that undercuts the whole system of checks and balances that we have, and I didn't believe it was legal. And I had been reading about, you know, all the new powers under the Patriot Act, and it just seemed to me that I didn't have much choice but to say something about it.
We're going to break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by one of the 4 Connecticut librarians who were joined with your case.
Great.
Because, like you, they resisted the FBI's call and sued the U.S. government. We're talking to Nick Merrill, president of the internet service provider Calyx, filed the first court challenge to the FBI's national security letters in 2004.